Trade is an exchange. You give up what you have for what you need when you're trading. You give up what you have for what you need. When you look at this parable, the Bible says one person received 5, the other received 2, the other received 1. The one who had 5 went and traded with what he had. He didn't keep what he had. He went and traded with what he had. He exchanged what he had for what he needed. And that's how value changes. In trading, you release your liabilities and you acquire assets. Because all of us have got assets and all of us have got liabilities. Assets are your plus, liabilities are your negatives. The balance between your negative and your positive, your assets and your liabilities, determines your net value. And your net value determines what you really are and what you're really worth. When God gives us life, there are pluses and there are minuses. There are assets and there are liabilities. When we trade, we are able to release our liabilities so we can acquire assets, and we use our assets to acquire more assets. The parable here teaches us that it's not really important where you start with, but how far you can work with this dot over here, with yourself. In life, all of us start life at the beginning. All of us start on the left side. The Bible says that God has set a race before us. So there is something set before each one of us. Each one of us came to life with something set ahead of us. But not all of us are able to move to change our value as we go along. Some people remain where life deposited them. Some people actually go backwards beyond where life deposited them, and some people begin to move forward from where life deposited them. It has been found out that only 2% of those who inherited wealth were able to add to it in their lifetime. 98% of those who inherit their father's wealth destroy it. Because what you didn't create is very difficult for you to manage. In life, you manage what you develop and what you create yourself. And many people don't create, but they want to acquire. And if you didn't learn the process of creating, you wouldn't master the process of managing. We start from here, negative, or before the numbers. When you place a dot before all these numbers, you know that the difference between the one who received the 5 and the one who received the 2 and the one who received the 1 is only fractional. It's not major. That means that if somebody today was born and he was born to the richest person in the world, and somebody today was born and he was born to the poorest person in the world, you cannot use where life deposited them as the basis of where they are going in life. Because for the one who received much, he may not make any movement. But for the one who received nothing, he may make a lot of movement. The incentive of life, the way God balances it is this. The one who has nothing has more drive to acquire, and the one who has more has very little drive to acquire. Almost all the successful people in the world are first-generation successful people. Nobody passed it to them. And almost all of them began in very deprived conditions. The greatest leaders of the world, almost all of them came from very, very, very dysfunctional backgrounds. Some were orphans, some were foster children, Some were bad students in school. Some started with poverty, but they all moved. Because most of the time, when we move in life, the pressure of what is behind us moves us forward. I think it's Pastor Matthew I heard saying that the dog that is chasing you will determine the speed at which you run. I don't know whether it's a Nigerian proverb or what. But the dog that is chasing you will determine the speed at which you run. If you were born in poverty, the effort that causes you to move is stronger than the one who was born in wealth. It's simple. Yesterday I watched a documentary on CNN by a Sierra Leonean, and I think it's called Exodus from Africa, and it talked about all these Africans who are trying to run to Europe, some of whom are here. Don't worry, I'm not talking about you. They are not in this place. They're somewhere else. But these people were sacrificing so much. And they had to walk across the desert. They had to go across the sea between, I think, Tangiers and Spain. And they had to do all these things. They survived in the wilderness. They fought a lot of things. They had to suffer hunger. And why were they running and never getting tired? Why couldn't they be discouraged? It's because what was running after them was worse than what they were running into. And so the force of their past becomes a motivation. But for one who has never suffered, a little difficulty will make him relax. So in God's system of compensation, the one who starts with less has greater motivation than the one who starts with nothing. Because you see, we all have to move the dot. And wherever you locate the dot, that determines your value. Remember, in this parable, Jesus did not judge people by how much they received. He judged them by what they did with what they received. And that's what God is saying. It's not important what you receive in life. It's important what you do with what you receive in life. And if you don't like what you have, trade it. Because we are all traders in life. We're all trading. Everybody's trading. You are exchanging what we have for what we need. There is a man called Samson in the Bible. He was born with prophecy. And it wasn't a human being who prophesied, it's an angel who prophesied. Some of us had no prophecy, and all the words we heard from our childhood were negative words. This man had positive words from day one. He came from a family that loved him. He was born with prophecy, but in his life, he traded his promise for disobedience. And so, although so much was set before him, he couldn't move himself to appropriate what was said before him. I'll give you an example. David, he was not born with promise. He was born with rejection. Nobody knew him, nobody considered him, and yet he traded his rejection for royalty. I'll give you another example. King Saul. Many people think that Saul didn't have a promise. Saul had a promise. God called him, anointed him. The Bible says he turned into another man. He became a different person, and yet he did not fulfill the prophecy on his life. Why? Because he exchanged what he had for something else. Joseph traded the prison for rulership. Esau traded his birthright for food. Jacob traded his food for royalty and for blessing. Esther traded ordinariness for royalty. Jabez traded pain for favor. Hannah traded mockery for a prophetic son. It doesn't matter what you have, you can exchange it for something better than what you have. And that's what trading is all about.